Were there other, within the framework of halacha during that time, that Tikun Olam could have stepped up to the plate and gone, could they have gone even further? It seems to me it's such a small step knowing what we know today about the complications of agunot.
Mm-hmm. So next week,
for them to make that jump.
Next week, we're going to see a much bigger jump that they tried to make. Is it used in the name of Tikun Olam? Not necessarily, but if we continue on with, which is my plan right now, in the next Sugiyot, which is what if you go against the Takana of Rabban Gamliel? So we're going to see there's a debate about it, and whatever. I don't want to give it all away. So hold off on next week till we talk about what you'll see the Gemara does suggest as a possibility. And you do see that there's actually, if you learn this, it's one of my favorite chapters in all of the Gemara. There's a story, there's a bunch of stories, and they show all these stories. We're not going to get to them in this course, but of people who tried to cancel gets and tried not to give gets to their wives, and all sorts of things the rabbis did. They tried to force, they tried to do all sorts of things to get people to give gets. Again, they were kind of confined within halacha and what was available and what was able to do in halacha. One of my favorites is when they tell the witnesses, stick zucchinis in your ears so that you don't hear him telling you to cancel the get. Okay, so they do come up with creative solutions. Again, I don't know if you call that creative enough, but there are definitely attempts to try to resolve these issues in the Gemara itself. I don't want to give away the one from next week, so I'll have to come back.
Michelle.
Yeah.
I'd like to say something. I'd like to thank you, first of all, for lengthening the time of the Chavruta.
Okay.
Yeah, that was good.
For me, that made a very big difference. We had time to discuss, to review. And the second thing is, I think it's a great idea that you stopped by. I'm very, very thankful that you stopped by. It just makes things so much more, I don't know. We have a mentor who can help us when we need help. Okay. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot.
Good You're night. Welcome. Any other questions?
I'd like to second what Ora just said. It was very much better with the longer time for the Chavruta. There wasn't this pressure. We were able to discuss it. We didn't jump out of it straight away. We could ask each other questions. We could ponder things, try and understand what the texts were saying. I think a further improvement, personally, if we have limited time, if we haven't got all the time in the world, would be not to require punctuation.
I'm not working on punctuation.
You can't do it. You can't do it without. We can't do it without punctuation. But the thing is, when we're learning in the real world, we're going to go to the English anyway to see the punctuation. Between you and me, we need to work out the punctuation before we can deal with it. But it takes too much. It takes away from the time.
So I firmly believe that if you don't practice punctuation, you'll never get it. And you'll always be intimidated by opening a regular Gemara. If for some reason you end up one day with a regular Gemara and you want to open it and look at it, or you get a source sheet that doesn't have it. I know things have changed and it's different from 20 years ago and everyone's in Sefaria and this, but I really think that that's key. And it's also key because when you read Sefaria or, wherever it is and it's got the punctuation, it's also good to know sometimes that there's different ways to punctuate. And if you know and you understand, then you sometimes know, like I'm trained already so well that when I read a commentary, right, I'll say, that doesn't sound right. And then I'll think, okay, that must mean that there's different ways to read this. Right. And it's not so clear. He's adding a lot of words that clearly aren't in the Gemara. And I bet there's another way to read this. And sure enough, I look into it and I find that there is. So you have to have experience of struggling with the punctuation to be able to see when you see someone punctuate something and then you think, is that really the way it's punctuated? I would have thought to do it a different way. And then you realize, oh, maybe it could be a different way. It's always the problem with translation. Translations are great and they really help you, but it's one translation and it's limiting what I try to show you all the time, which is there's so many possibilities in the Gemara of reading. The same words could be punctuated differently, could be a question instead of an answer. It could be. So sometimes it can't be. Sometimes it's clear this is a question and it's clear this is an answer, but sometimes it's not. And that's the beauty of Gemara. And if you only rely on translations and punctuated text, you'll lose that beauty.
I would just actually wanted to say it's the punctuation is very challenging. There's no question, but I'm now finding it a bit easier than I was with with the course we did a year ago and so on and so forth. And also I much preferred the longer Chavruta time. And also, did you organize the questions a little bit differently because it seemed to flow a little bit easier this year?
I worked out a little differently. It also happens to be, I made sure to choose a topic that the sources were manageable. Until now, I haven't wanted to leave you for so long in Chavruta because I was worried that you get lost and then you'd be stuck and you wouldn't be able to move on. So I made sure that this week's topic, that's why I think I'm doing the next week's topic next week, but I might change my mind about it because I might decide that I don't want you to get lost too much in Chavruta. So I have to think about it. I need the week to figure it out. But yeah, I designed it in a way that I thought that you can handle the longer Chavruta. And I also agree. I think it's much better this way. So I'll have to think going forward about how to do it in a way that I can know that you won't get totally lost and be stuck at certain points and not be able to move forward. So it'll be in terms of choosing which Sugiyot I can use to do that with and which are more complicated. Yeah, Laura.
Rabbanit, thank you. In the course of our Chavruta, somebody brought up that there was the Hebrew version of this Masechet. Was that last year? Was that parallel to this?
Rabbanit Chana did it. We did it in parallel, but we did it different months. It just worked better for her. She did it in December and I did it now. Last time we did it at the same time.
How would I access that?
What? How would you access it? It's in the course. It's in the course, the same place where you access mine. You just have to be on the Hebrew side. And there's
there's a link to the Hebrew one from the course page. The English course page has a link to the Hebrew course. But you could always find it on the Hebrew course's website. Sorry to interrupt.
So it's somewhat parallel, but not fully. Like she did this class, she combined with, she went a little farther on. I decided to cut it. So if you want, some of the material is very, very similar and some of it's a little bit different. Like the class number 2, I think it was, I didn't do yet. I'm not sure I'm going to do it. So I wasn't sure. I was thinking about whether it would be relevant. So anyway, there's some of it's very similar and some of it's a little different.
Yeah, Julie and I have reviewed that material twice already, assuming you're going to do it.
Sorry. It's good. You learned something. I don't feel bad.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
In terms of punctuation and trying to get through it on our own, on Shabbat, I tend to read from the Koran with Steinsaltz, and he doesn't just translate, he adds a lot of additional words. And I'm never sure whether I should just look at the real words and see how that goes together or read through how he interprets it.
Yeah.
What's your thought on that?
So it depends what your goals are. Okay. He clearly has a particular approach. And I'll just give you an example. If you were to learn with the Schottenstein and you were to learn with the Koren, you would see that the pshat of the Gemara that the Koren has and the pshat that the Schottenstein has, they both add words and they both often add different words. Okay, not in everything, but I would say in a lot of places. The Schottenstein generally follows Rashi. Steinsaltz often had his own creative way of reading the text and also relied on other sources, not just Rashi. The Schottenstein has an approach generally, like their approach is to basically try to understand and read it through Rashi's reading. And Rashi's reading, even though we rely on it all the time, like here you saw it was a good example where Rashi has one way of reading it and the Meiri has a totally different way of reading it. And if you would have read, let's say, the Koren on that, he might have explained it the way the Meiri explained it. And then you'd have a totally different explanation of, was it in a Beit Din in a different city? And Rabban Gamliel says, you can only do it in a Beit Din in this city. Or according to Rashi, you can't do it in a Beit Din at all. So you come up with a very different conclusion. I don't think it's a bad thing to read Steinsaltz's commentary, in the Koren. I think it's great because if you want to learn the daf, you need to choose a commentary. Like when you're learning the daf, you don't have time necessarily to read 5 different pshat of one line. You just want to get a understanding, one understanding of the text. So I think it's totally fine to read the commentaries. If your goal is to learn how to learn Gemara, though, then I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. That's why when I take the commentary from the Koren, because it's on Sefaria, when I do the translation, and I cut out all the extra words, because I don't want you to see those words, because those words are commentary. So I try to cut them and then sometimes even change them a little so that it matches word for word rather than all the extra explanations.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you for joining tonight. And one more last class until the next series that we'll do down the road. I do promise that we will continue this and your skills will get better over time. So even if it's not going to be a year-long course, but we will do courses like this over time and slowly you will build your skills as I see. It's nice hearing from some of you that you do feel that things are improving. And if you're of those people who don't yet feel that way, you will get there, I promise.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.